with me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to my continued coverage of the coaching carousel here on the Louie T Network. Of course, I'm your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. I talked about the 8 NFL vacancies that existed when the regular season came to a close and Black Monday took place. 6 teams had filled their vacancies, 2 remained unfilled. And really, for the last 3 weeks, we've known about the 2 coaches that would occupy the final 2 vacancies. They were just waiting for those 2 teams, and they happened to be the 2 teams playing in the Super Bowl, to finish up their season so they could make their announcements official with their new head coaches. We heard about the Cincinnati Bengals wanting to sign ex-quarterbacks coach of the Los Angeles Rams, Zach Taylor, to be their next head coach. And we also heard about this next guy that we're going to talk about in Brian Flores becoming the next head coach of the Miami Dolphins. And I talked about this on the podcast a few weeks ago about how in this league we've seen a dramatic change. I think one that we can pretty much trace back to the hiring of Sean McVay and what he was able to do for a young quarterback in Jared Goff going into his 2nd season. We now saw the Bears employ the same thing with Matt Nagy and Mitchell Trubisky, and it worked out great there. They won the division this season, had a home playoff game. So that's the new trend in the direction the league is going into, where if you have a young quarterback that you believe in, or in the case of the Green Bay Packers or in Cincinnati, where you have a veteran, established franchise quarterback that you want to take to new heights, or just want to have him be the guy that carries you into the future, as in Green Bay or in Cincinnati, a guy that you've identified as your franchise quarterback and you want to build around that guy, then you go out and you get an offensive mind. But generally in this league, if you got a franchise guy at the quarterback position, then you go out and get you a young offensive-minded coach to marry with that quarterback and try to make beautiful music that way. That's what the league has become. But in the case that you don't have a franchise quarterback under center at this very moment, i.e. Denver hiring Vic Fangio, and here with the Miami Dolphins hiring Brian Flores, you go get a defensive-minded guy. You take the strong suit of your team, which in most cases is going to be your defense because you don't have a quarterback that you believe in yet, and you try to win football games on that side of the football that way until you can find the quarterback of the future. And so in Miami, I think it's just like the Denver situation, where you have a team where the nucleus of your football team is on the defensive side of the football. And so you don't have a quarterback that you love in Ryan Tannehill. I don't think he's married to this franchise. As a matter of fact, I would not be shocked if the Dolphins, who sit with the 13th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft, aren't shopping for a quarterback, and maybe they get one in free agency. This isn't the strongest free agency crop of quarterbacks, but there are some veterans that if you feel like you're close, and maybe the Dolphins feel like they're close to competing. We'll see 7-9. I don't know how close you are when you're 7-9, but maybe they feel like if they can get more production out of the quarterback position, i.e. a Nicholas Foles or a Joseph Flacco, maybe then you can compete with the likes of the Patriots in your division, or the likes of the Chiefs and the Chargers in the AFC West, or teams of that ilk in the AFC Conference. And so maybe they feel like they're a veteran quarterback away from being right in the thick of things in the AFC. But really, realistically, if you're a Dolphins fan, you want to move on into the future. You want a young quarterback that you can build around, but you want this defense in the meantime to give you chances to win football games, to stick it to the Patriots, to stick it to the Jets and the Bills twice a year. And they're hoping that Brian Flores, and I named this video specifically different this time around because he's another disciple of Bill Belichick, is Brian Flores, the 37-year-old new head coach of the Miami Dolphins, coming over from the New England Patriots. And what you've got to love about Brian Flores is he comes in and he's a lifelong Patriots coach. He started at the bottom rung, worked his way all the way up to linebackers coach, and really he was the de facto defensive coordinator. They did not give him the title after Matt Patricia vacated after getting the Detroit Lions job last offseason. They didn't fill the role of defensive coordinator. They kind of left that position open. But there was an understanding that even though Brian Flores was just the linebackers coach, he was, for all intents and purposes, the defensive coordinator as well. He did a great job, along with Bill Belichick, of scheming up the defense. And he was the guy that got the calls into the helmet of the signal caller on the field. So, for all intents and purposes, Brian Flores was the defensive coordinator in New England. And if you watched the Super Bowl just a day ago and saw the mastery of this Patriots defense, that I was floored by their performance, then you've got to respect what Brian Flores has done. And really, when you look at what the Patriots have done during this postseason run, they weren't the greatest defense all season long. They had their ups and their downs, but it's a testament to Brian Flores, it's a testament to Bill Belichick and what the Patriots do, that they were able to reinvent themselves come postseason time, figure some things out, take away what the other team did best. They dismantled the Chargers. They really, for 3.5 quarters, held down the Kansas City Chiefs, and then in the fourth quarter, the Chiefs exploded. But nonetheless, that's Patrick Mahomes. He's a different breed. He's a different animal. But for the most part, they did a hell of a job in that football game to give themselves a chance to win there. And then we saw what they did to a very prolific Rams offense that was averaging up over 32 points a game this season, second in the league. Well, they took them and reduced them to a whole entire 3 points in 4 quarters. That's one hell of a performance. And if you look at that Patriots football team, outside of a couple of names on that defense, there aren't any real stars. Dante Hightower is a star on that defense, even though he doesn't get enough credit. Kyle Van Noy played his ass off this season and has played his ass off since coming to New England. He's not quite a star yet, but if he continues to play the way that he's played this season, he'll morph into that in New England and be one of those New England folklore type of players. But really right now, all they have on that defense that is noteworthy, that jumps off the screen. So I know a lot of people love Trey Flowers, and we talk about how underrated he is, and he is underrated for what he does for that defense. But it's Dante Hightower and there's Stephon Gilmore. And Patrick Chung, I really love what he brings to the table. Thought that was a big injury last night, but Harmon came in and did a bang-up job. But that's besides the point. That's a mixed match parts defense, all right? You look at what they have up front. Danny Shelton, they got him in a trade, and they add in all of these different pieces. Van Noy was a guy that they acquired in a trade, and they just bring in these mixed match parts, and they throw them into a melting pot, and they get the most out of these guys. Hell, John Simon was on the field playing major snaps last night for the Patriots, and they were getting the most out of John Simon. He was all over the football field. That's what the Patriots have done, and you have to give credit to a guy like Brian Flores, who is the linebackers coach. So when you're talking Dante Hightower, when you're talking Van Noy, when you're talking John Simon, and you're seeing these guys fly all over the football field, you have to give credit to Brian Flores because he's coaching those guys intimately. And then when you look at the defense as a whole and what they were able to do in the postseason run, and specifically against the Rams, you got to give a ton of credit to Brian Flores and what he was able to do. But you're hoping that it's different this time around for this particular coach, because if you look at the Bill Belichick coaching tree and the fruit that has fallen off of that tree, it has fallen way too far away from the tree. You want the apples to fall a little bit closer to the tree and be a little bit more like what the Patriots have been able to do and sustain over the last 2 decades now, or nearly the last 2 decades. But we've seen all of these coaches get opportunities, whether it's Romeo Crennel or it's Eric Mangini or any of these coaches that we've seen, Charlie Weiss at the lower college ranks. These guys haven't had a lot of success. Matt Patricia looked like he bombed out in his first year. I reserve judgment on him, but you're hearing reports of him showing up late for his own meetings and things of that nature. It just hasn't been good for Patriot assistants. We'll see what happens with McDaniels if he even leaves. He may decide to stay in New England and be the next guy in New England. I'm thinking that's what he's waiting on, to see if he could wait out Belichick and be the next guy in line in New England to take over the mantle there. But well, that's nor here nor there. The bottom line is Patriot coaches under Belichick haven't been good once they've left the nest. And you're hoping that with Brian Flores, it's different this time around. And really, when you're in the AFC East, and they talk about all of the different coaches that have come through the AFC East since Bill Belichick has taken over for the Patriots, and there's some crazy number like 32 different head coaches between the 3 organizations since the Patriots have employed Belichick over the last 18 years or so. It's been, I believe now, 19 years, somewhere in there. And you look at the Dolphins, and you look at any team in that division for that matter, And what it all boils down to, it's got this kind of college feel to it, where you're like, you look at Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, and the reason he's coming under fire, it's not because Michigan isn't good every year. He doesn't recruit. They don't have good players. He wins 9 or 10 games every single year. They're right there in the mix every single year to try to win a Big Ten title. But why do they not win? Because the one thing you have to do when you get hired at Michigan or you get hired at Ohio State is you got to beat Ohio State if you're hired at Michigan. You got to beat Michigan if you're hired at Ohio State. That's a part of the job. If you can't get that done, then you've got to go. The same can be said for any team getting hired as a head coach in the AFC East. You've got to beat New England. Now, Adam Gase didn't do a half-bad job at that. Every single year, he would beat the Patriots at least once. Usually, it was the game in Miami, and he would take care of business there. But he didn't do a good enough job of taking care of the rest of the lowlights in that division. He didn't do a good enough job of sweeping up the Jets and the Bills. He struggled with those teams quite often, and you can't afford to split with every team in your division. That makes you mediocre, and when you look at the Dolphins' record this year and in past years, it's been pretty mediocre sans for Adam Gase's first season in Miami, where he was able to take this team to the postseason. I digress, though. The big picture here is you need a guy that's a great communicator. We don't know if Brian Flores is that. You're hoping that he is. What we've seen from a lot of Bill Belichick's disciples is they haven't been great communicators with players. They haven't done a great job of putting everything together. X's and O's, great communicator, and a great leader of men, all the while being able to manage the job of being a head coach in this league. I think Romeo Crennel might be a great communicator, but he wasn't great with being a leader of men and great at managing the job of being a head coach. Whereas Charlie Weiss, I don't know if he's a great communicator. It doesn't seem like one to me. I'm a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan. Didn't feel like he was a great communicator. Didn't feel like he recruited great players because he wasn't a great communicator. Wasn't able to get through the guys to make them want to come to Notre Dame and play for him. And the guys that he did get, I didn't think he got through to them either. So there was always a disconnect with him. You look at some of the other guys, Eric Mangini, he seemed like a little bit of an ass. Again, these things catch up with you in the long run. As an NFL head coach, look, I talk about this all the time. I talked about it on the podcast. When you get to this point as an NFL coach, you know X's and O's. Some know them better than others, all right? But you know X's and O's, all right? You got this job because they think that you're a bright guy. You understand the game of football. You know ball, all right? So that's not what we're worried about when you get to this point. What we're worried about is, are you a leader of men? Can you galvanize 53 different personalities for the set common one goal of winning a Super Bowl, of winning the AFC East division and unseating the New England Patriots? Can you bring 53 different personalities together and do it on a weekly basis, week in and week out? Can you handle the challenges of guys going down, next man up mentality? Can you find a way to get your team to play the Bills on the road and in the following week go on the road and beat the Jets? Then come back home and have to find a way to beat the Oakland Raiders and not slip up once or twice in that 3-game stretch as the Dolphins continuously and consistently do. When they should win games, they don't. And when you expect them to lose, they find a way to win. Can you find a way to navigate through an NFL season consistently? Not just one year like Adam Gase did, take you to the postseason and then flame out the next year. Can you find a way to win consistently in this league? That's the question that the Dolphins have for Brian Flores. They think they've identified a guy that's going to take this defense to the next level, which will give them a chance to be competitive on a week-in, week-out basis, all the while trying to figure out the right mix and match on the offensive side of football. Because I've said this a number of times, I think there's a lot of talent on the Dolphins team. They've gotten rid of some of their best talent over the last year or two, which I'm not a huge fan of, but there's still plenty of talent on that football team if they could just squeeze the most out of the rag of talent that they have and fill that bucket up offensively and find the right guy at the quarterback position, because I don't believe Ryan Tannehill is that guy. You may have something, but in the meantime, while you're trying to figure out the quarterback position, if you can get this defense to play their best brand of football, it'll give you a shot week in and week out in the AFC East that is not the strongest division, and we all know that because the Patriots win it every single year, and generally they win 5 out of 6 games, or as they did this year, they sweep the entire division and win all 6 of their games. You've got to find a way to get it done in the division first. And if Flores can come in and do that, he may be able to change the fortunes of the Miami Dolphins. I'm very anxious to see how this goes. He was the only minority hire this offseason, so I'm anxious to see how this goes, and I'm rooting for Brian Flores to be successful. And hell, let's face it, we're all rooting for someone to be competitive. You don't have to necessarily dethrone the Patriots. I'm looking for someone to just be competitive with them. Stop them from clinching the division in week 13. Stop them from clinching the AFC East in week 12. I'm looking for someone to push the Patriots to the limit. Can Brian Flores help the Miami Dolphins be that team? We'll find out. I'm anxious also to see how he fills out this staff, who becomes his offensive coordinator, who are some of his defensive coordinators and some of his other coaches that will fill out this staff. That'll be interesting to see if he tries to bring along some guys from New England, or how does that work? I'm anxious to see how he fills out the rest of his staff. But I am very intrigued by this hire. I think this guy is a bright defensive mind. I think he has learned some things because he's been in New England over a decade. All right. So he's had a long time in that organization to pick apart what they do and take the best of what they do along with him to Miami. And you're hoping that they've gotten it right. And you're hoping, for your sake, that this Belichick disciple is different this time around. I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Remember, check out the Louie T Network podcast. It's available on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Music Play, TuneIn, and of course the website, louietnetwork.net. And remember, draft coverage right around the corner, so don't you go anywhere. Subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great coverage. I'll see you next time. Have a good one.